So I'd like to welcome everyone to Co-Creator Circle as co-creators, because I think that's what we are doing, co-creating this world to benefit all beings. And that's why I love to have people like Kathy, who's going to tell us something which we know in our heart, but now we're going to make it even more clear, because I know that Kathy is going to explain to us things about how to connect with trees and how to use bear medicine in ways that we may never have thought of. Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you so much. Well, deep appreciation for all of you being here today. I know you have a lot of choices where to be on your weekend, and it's just really a beautiful experience to be with all of you here today. And deep gratitude for anybody who's joining asynchronously after the fact through recording. So my intention is that this message can reach deeply into the hearts of all of us who are here present right now in real time, and then in the future as well. So we're just going to do a little bit of a grounding exercise to shake off the road dust of whatever we've, come into this meeting with, and just take some time to connect. So we're just going to do this in a very simple way. If you feel comfortable doing so, you can lower your eyelids. If possible, maybe put your feet flat on the ground. I'd like for us to just get a sense of connection with the earth. And though we are, some of us located near one another, others are quite far away, just connecting ourselves to the earth and reminding ourselves of that deep, mycelial network that goes underneath the ground and works with the trees and connects all that is. That's part of our network as well. So now what I'd like to do is to just bring our breath into that awareness. We'll take a series of 3 deep breaths, intending to connect through this mycelial network below the forest floor. Just breathe in through your nose and then breathe out slowly through your mouth. So we'll start that now. First breath. And then release slowly. Another deep breath. And slow release. And one more deep breath through the nose. And slow release through the mouth. Okay, that's a simple grounding exercise. I know some of you are gifted at much more elaborate, methodologies, but hopefully that was enough to just slow us down and bring us into a slowed down sacred space where we can, just be able to connect and receive information that's coming not only through me, but universal wisdom that's available to all of us out there in the universe. So we're just all channels for that. Any of us are completely capable of doing that. And we're just here to talk about my specific way that I have done that in the past and what it's brought me to today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen briefly. I'm not going to make this a presentation per se, but just to get things started, I will do that. Okay, sorry, I thought I had this all ready to go. Here we are. Just a few slides. What I'm thinking is there's a lot to unpack here with this topic. I mean, bless all of you for being here today. And I'm not sure whether it was like the first part, co-create with nature, the very active, more general aspect of this title that brought you in, or my story of bear medicine, if bear medicine means something particularly to you, or partnering with a tree, or some of you that already know me, bless your hearts, you came because you said, I know Kathy and I'm here for that. So what I thought I would do is just have this proposed format. For people who don't know who the heck I am, I think it would make a lot of sense to just, talk a little bit about that. So you've got my background. Maybe there's something in my background that, would be interesting for you to explore. And then also, obviously, what is bear medicine? And this is not the quintessential guide to what is bear medicine. This is Kathy Sipple's download from nature, my interpretation of what is bear medicine. And then, honestly, I think there are probably people out there who can handle this topic better about how can I co-create with nature, but I'd certainly like to give people some general tips if bear medicine or tree partnering is not, your specific way to co-create with nature. And then I would like to leave plenty of time at the end to just open it up and have this be very interactive. So if you're sitting with a question, maybe just to preserve the quality of the recording for people who jump in later, jot it down, or you can go ahead and put it in chat. It would be great to know what's percolating with you, but just know that we are going to reserve, I'd like to finish probably 15 minutes or even 20 minutes before the end of the hour so that we've got plenty of time for that. So hopefully that sounds good. I don't usually like to brag about who I am, but what I'm going to say is, for me, this is kind of my tree resume, since my tree can't be here and speak in the way that I can. I kind of want to tell you who I am besides somebody who hugs trees. I do hug multiple trees, but this is my very special tree that I actually took to calling a bear tree. You can't exactly tell from this picture, but to me, it is shaped a little bit like a bear. When I saw it at the Indiana Dunes State Park, which, by the way, is where I live. I'm here in Valparaiso, Indiana. So this is maybe 15, 20 minutes for me. The first time I saw this tree, I just thought, wow, I need to hug that tree. And honestly, before that time, this was maybe 12, 13 years ago, I was not exactly a tree hugger. This was not something that spoke to me. This was not in my awareness. I wasn't even really all that nature connected. I mean, as a kid, I probably had things like everybody that I enjoyed being outside, but it was something about this special tree that kept me coming out to this specific trail, to this specific tree, and wanting to like hug it each time. And at the beginning there, it was just nice. It just felt nice. It actually felt like the tree was kind of molded to my body and just inviting me to hug it. But over time, I was just so interested to start getting these messages or downloads. So Meenakshi and I share a very important and influential teacher in our lives who has now transitioned, but her name was Barbara Marx Hubbard. So for anybody who's not aware of her work, it's just beautiful. She changed my life. She's just absolutely amazing. But when I told her that I wanted to share bear medicine with the world, she said, well, Kathy, I think that might be a bit odd for people to just hear that you talk to trees. So she actually encouraged me to develop what I'm calling this tree resume. This is my tree cred, if you will. Some people have street cred. This is my tree cred. I want to share this not to brag, but just to say, yes, I am a tree hugger. And I also, hold a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from the University of Michigan. I'm a member of Mensa. I'm a multiple, best-selling author, co-author so far. I've done a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go through all this thing. If somebody wants to freeze it or look at it later with recording, you can see all these things that I do. But really, what's most important for me to share all of this with you is just kind of where I've been. Some of it brought me to being the tree hugger, that I am, and some of it was actually because of my tree interaction that it inspired me to go deeper and to learn some of this as part of how to figure out bear medicine. So that's really enough about me. Just in summary, to switch it over back to like a more fun and fluid kind of thing. If anybody, remembers that movie or the book, The Lorax, I am the Lorax, I speak for the trees. I guess basically that's what I'm trying to be, is just how can I speak for the trees? I share with you everything I shared before about myself, just because I'm trying to give the trees the best voice and the best credibility out there, so we don't get poo-pooed by somebody later listening to this message like, who is this person? And honestly, I think this is why we're all here, is unless people like us care a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And it's important that we're not all trying to do exactly the same thing, but that we can slow down and get clues from nature to find out that very specific thing that is ours to do. And so that's why we did the deep, grounding breath, the slowing down. It's partly to connect in the space, but also to slow down our awareness to things that are possible, like communicating with nature, like receiving subtle insights, like getting, flashes of intuition. but you can really call it whatever you want. Just for the record, some of you may be better tree speakers than I am. I don't hear the tree out loud. It's more of when I hug the tree, I get messages. I feel like I kind of get downloads from the tree that were not in my mind prior to hugging the tree. So I don't know if it's something about the slowing down, if it's something about, the ritual of it, if it's something about putting myself in that creative space where I'm prepared to receive. But all I can tell you is it absolutely is and was real for me. It has been, for over a decade now. At the beginning, quite honestly, I would get just, maybe one word things like peace, unity. Then it started getting a little bit more complex. One time, the tree, just for simplification moving forward, I'm going to say the tree said, and you can understand what that means now. It's not out loud talking, but it's a spirit connection with the tree. One time the tree said, come, unity, community. And I can tell you before that time, hugging the tree that day, I had never broken down the word community into come plus unity, an invitation into unity. So I'm totally giving the tree credit for that one. It was just, beautiful. But on January 1st of 2016, I was hugging my tree and it was just different that day. It was almost like the tree said, hey, I have something to say and it's longer. So please don't just give me a short hug, like hang in there. I got something to say, which kind of surprised me because that had not happened before. And there was like a pulsing, and I can't explain what the pulsing was, but it was kind of like an electricity, almost like, blood going through veins. Maybe it's, sap moving through the phloem and the xylem, up and down the trees. Who knows? It was just what I felt and it was real. And this is the message that I got on January 1st of 2016. The tree said, I am asking you to partner with me to bring bear medicine from the forest out into the world. And so, I answered, again, not out loud, but in my heart, back to the tree, I said, yes, of course, because the tree has never once asked me a favor, and I was not going to deny my special bear tree friend. So I should say too that my husband and my dog are on these hikes, and my husband holds our dog while I'm hugging the tree, and he kind of does an eye roll and says, what did the tree say today? And I told him, the tree asked me to partner with it to bring bear medicine from the forest out into the world. And he asked me, probably the logical question that some of you may be sitting with is, what is bear medicine? And what does that even mean? And I had to absolutely say, I don't know. I honestly don't know that term was in my awareness before. Like immediately, I became very curious about it. We don't have a whole lot of bears in Indiana. It was interesting though, in 2016, we actually had our only bear sighting in many, many, many years, where one traveled down from Michigan and unfortunately it ended up dying. It was not a good end for that one bear, but it's not something that we have a lot here in Indiana. Oh, somebody not muted. Meenakshi, are you able to mute? Okay, thank you. So in any case, I honestly didn't know. So I just went back home with that spirit that we're all now in the first year of the week. So it wasn't, a different energy all that much than what we're at right now. It's new year, we're curious, what is this year going to bring? So I just went right to Google, the interwebs of, just like the mycelial network is there below the forest floor connecting all the trees. The internet to me is just like, hey, it's the wood wide web. I didn't make that up. That's now out there in the collective consciousness. And I thought, well, somebody's got to have some insights into what is bear medicine. So I was in this Facebook group called Sisterhood of the Talking Trees. And I just thought, well, if anybody would know, I bet these ladies, would have some insights. And so bear medicine, when I heard it from the tree, when I felt it, I just thought, oh, is this indigenous wisdom? Like, I am not indigenous to Native, I'm not a Native American. Like, is this cultural appropriation? Is this dangerous? Should I not be talking about this? it made me a little nervous, frankly, because I wanted to be deeply respectful and I wanted to handle this, the right way. And what those women, those wise women guided me in is they said, you need to go inward to determine what it is for you. There is no one clear interpretation. So you can read what it means in this culture, what it means in, other cultures, what it means to you. They advised me to do some journaling, some dream work, and that's what I did. So kind of like how it is here today in Indiana, where I live, kind of icy, snowy. I went outside to collect my mail and I actually ended up wiping out on black ice and it knocked me out cold. And so like a bear, I ended up hibernating and I had to take some painkillers, actually, something I don't do very often, but I was in pain and I ended up sleeping for almost, better part of the day. And I went into this dream space where I actually dreamed of bears and I saw a bear on the left side of a hill and a bear on the right side of a hill. And they were both coming down kind of like to meet me. And I kind of went toward this middle way thinking, I'm a human. I don't know how to interact with bears, but I need to go down the middle to figure this out. And so there was also a mushroom, by the way, not a magic mushroom. I've not done magic mushrooms. I'm not anti, but this has nothing to do with that. I'm just talking about, there was a mushroom that I actually saw in this middle path that I'd never seen before in my life. And when I Googled it later to try to find out what it was, I found out that it was called a bear tooth mushroom. And I thought, wow, that's really just incredible. So all systems just seem to be on go, leading me to believe that this is real and this is what's mine to do. But anyway, when I got up out of that dream, I just somehow thought that what bear medicine is to me is when somebody feels called to heal at a community level. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I've, been interested in natural healing and, just healing relationships or one-to-one situations. But when I started to think about how would I level up and scale my game if I were to accept the challenge of bear medicine, how would I heal at a community level? I just followed the path of where my mind was going, where all the neurons were, firing. And it told me that to heal a community, you would reveal the abundance that exists within the community. And you would reveal the connections that were available to people, much like the forest has the connections that connect what I didn't know then, but following the work of Suzanne Simard, which, followed years later. For anybody who's not heard of her, she's done amazing work figuring how trees actually talk to one another through the mycelial network, in the forest floor. I didn't know any of that then. But, in my mind and in my dreams, I was feeling this, that there are these trees called mother trees, which I think my bear tree is one. And it's like a main hub in that forest community that has all kinds of roots and, mushroom networks going out of it to feed its young and to warn other trees when there are predators or harmful insects landing on it. They actually, can say, hey, start producing poison in your leaves because we've got to ward off these intruders, so they work together, they cooperate. There's all this cooperation going on that we're not even aware of when we just casually walk through the forest. And so then I started thinking, how can we do biomimicry? How would we do that in life? How would I do that in my community? How could I develop models that could be shared, in communities elsewhere? And I found time banking. So two big ideas came to me that I wanted to put together. One is time banking, and we'll definitely talk a little bit about that. And then the other was permaculture, something that I've been very interested in for kind of a long time. So I'm thinking a lot of you drawn to this might know about permaculture. This is not, again, the definitive slide, but for the people who I work with here, where I am in Northwest Indiana, we've got a group called Northwest Indiana Permaculture Meetup. This is kind of our working definition. So it's a holistic design system that provides resiliency, regeneration, I need to move this, and community by observing and imitating patterns in nature and blending the best of indigenous knowledge and modern science through the mindful use of land, policy, economics, education, and technology for the benefit of all. And I thought, aha, that sounds like something I'm going to need in my bear medicine toolkit. So I put that in there. I actually signed up for a permaculture design certification like that very day. And I also knew that I didn't want to do a land-based permaculture, PDC, a permaculture design certification. I knew that I wanted to do a community project. And I found a white paper somewhere that talked about the intersectionality of permaculture and time banking. I thought, aha, that's going to be my capstone project that I submit. So I did submit an application. I got accepted. I got right on it. I started a time bank and it got up and running, that very year. It's still running today. We have a couple time bank members on the call here with us today. I think we're at about 180 something members. But anyway, permaculture, time banking. These were two ways that I felt I could take the ethics of permaculture, which is, yes, it is about nature. It's about, building soil. It's about, all of these things that we normally think of, but it's also the people care, which doesn't maybe sometimes get as much bandwidth in the permaculture community. It's about fair share and future care. So I just thought, if we could use time banking to help, even out the distribution of wealth and, what people own, whether it's money or other types of currencies that they have, that would be very helpful. So I'm not going to go through this. Other people, really probably handle this much, much better, but this is just a beautiful permaculture flower that kind of reminds all the different places where we can apply these ethics. And I settled in, I would say, really to the little petal that's about finances and economics. Time banking, we don't have time to go completely into it, but it's basically a way where people can bank 1 hour of time and receive 1 hour of time from somebody else in the network. And some people will say that, well, it's just like bartering, but no, it's not. Because bartering, you expend a lot of energy to figure out who it is that you want to give that hour to, and you've got to match, what they're going to give you back and decide that it's equal. In the time bank, an hour equals an hour equals an hour. I'd love to do a whole other thing about time banking sometime to give that its due. But at this time in January of 2016, which is kind of the day that I'm pulling back to, I didn't know all that yet. So I'm taking you kind of to where I was on that day. Another slide or idea that I found in permaculture, I believe this comes from Applewood Permaculture in the UK. I believe this was maybe generated initially by Luby McNamara, who has been one of my permaculture teachers. She wrote a great book called People in Permaculture. I got to study with her in January 2018 through a course that she calls Activating Cultural Emergence. Highly recommend, by the way. But it just gives us another way to think about how rich we are. It's not just financial capital, which tends to be a lot of the things that we think about, but there are things that we know. They're spiritual gifts. Some people are really good at grounding, these grounding exercises at, the beginning of a meeting like this. Social capital, who do I know? Who can I introduce you to? Material capital, do I have a piece of equipment that I wouldn't mind lending to people? All kinds of things. We have artists on this call today. You've got this beautiful gift that, artists, musicians, so many times, I don't like that they're called starving artists. I'm like, how can we turn that around? How can we shift all this capital around so that it could be shared? We are definitely rich if we start making good use of the capital that we have, and we acknowledge what it's going to take to form those connections in order to do the thing on the right, get these outputs. So that was my hope going into time banking, is that we could do that. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen now because I feel like that's probably enough of the slides. I'd really like to get into seeing all of you again here before too long. We've got about 25 minutes left, and I said we'd keep 15, 20 minutes left for Q&A. So anyway, what I want to tell you too is just where I have become frustrated. I want to tell you tools that I've picked up on and where I've, hit the edge of my knowledge and where I've had to explore more. And so what I'm really hoping too is that somebody on this call will have that next book or that next person that I need to meet who can, build my learning edge to help me out. There's a thing called Dunbar's number. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it basically states that most humans have the capacity to keep a network of about 150 people that we can manage in our minds and kind of actively tend to. So, mother trees, I don't know the math on how many they can nourish, but it's interesting that as our time bank crept above 150 people, I said we're about 180, things did start to break down. I was not a mother tree that could any longer really manage that network. And it made me sad because I'd put my heart and soul into building this time bank. I had personally, interviewed, explained time banking to each and every member. And then COVID hit too, which really didn't help. We previous to that had times where we would get together and we would have potlucks and we would have sharing. We had more natural, places of interactions where we could talk about our gifts and talk about our needs, and it was more organic. I will say there are time banking software packages out there that are helpful. They're not magical. Unfortunately, they are wonderful and they are probably necessary to manage, these transactions and to make it go smoothly. But there's also this human element of being willing to be vulnerable, and both in the giving and the receiving. The time bank doesn't work unless people both give and receive, which kind of makes sense, right? Who's going to be able to share their gifts if nobody's there to receive? So the receiving is every bit as important in bear medicine as the giving of gifts and the sharing. So there is abundance, but it only happens when people share naturally. And in the regular economy, of course, money is always the barrier. Like, I want what you have, but do I have money? If the answer is no, there could be a kid who wants to become a concert pianist. They want to learn how to play the piano. Their parents don't have money. So then it just doesn't happen. But maybe there's somebody in the community, could be 2 doors down, could be across town, who's like lonely, wants to share their gift, would love to teach piano, doesn't want to do it for, a living, to earn a living. But what is earning a living really but sharing our gifts? It's just that, we only acknowledge that one type of capital. And when we started the time bank, we had a really lovely woman, Linda Hogan, who started the time bank in Portland, Maine. We flew her in and she did some training with us. She said sometimes blowback that people get from being in a time bank is, well, are these people credentialed? Are they professionals? I might not want to get help from an amateur. And she helped break down that word amateur. And in Latin, comes from the word amas, which is love, to love. So would you rather have a professional teaching your kid piano, or would you rather have an amateur, somebody doing it for the love of sharing what they have? So yes, if you want to rewire your house or you're looking for brain surgery, I think common sense would prevail that you need to go to professionals for some of those things and you need to go through the normal channels. But in this economy that surrounds, our core economy, it's so often not acknowledged, just kind of like tree energy is so often not acknowledged. This tree communication is not acknowledged. And so, I'm not done learning bear medicine. I'm not expert at it. But the things that I have done in service to the tree and in service to my commitment to it, to practice it, to learn it, to spread it out in the world, would be permaculture, especially social permaculture, time banking. And then the piece that I have looked for most recently, I'd say in the last 18 months, to help me with that Dunbar's number, not being able to manage more than about 150 people, is sociocracy, which, if that's a new word for you, you can find out more information at governancealive.com. They've got some free webinars and free resources to help, and there are books out there. But what it basically means is governing ourselves, and it's a form of dynamic governance that involves a system of interlocking circles that have built-in redundancy. And again, that's kind of more how nature works. It's not built on this, pyramid thing. The thing that hurt my heart the most is when people started referring to the time bank as Kathy's time bank or your time bank. They're like, that's your baby. that is not what I wanted. I wanted it to be our time bank because I knew that was really the only way that it could thrive and succeed is if multiple people took leadership roles and we shared, shared the leadership, shared the responsibility to make it sustainable. So I'm still working on that. I'm not expert at that yet, but it's where I'm going. And I want to say too, just if this particular thing, bear medicine, resonates with you, I've got a link that I created. I don't have a website for this just yet, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in chat. It's a Google form, and it's just for you to let me know, like, what part of this resonates with you. Do you feel like, hey, I might be one of these mother tree hub connectors, in the community, and I want to connect with other people who are building these hubs, and I don't know what that's going to look like yet. Maybe we can form a group online and share. Or if there are people that are like, I don't know about any of this yet, or I'm at the very beginning of my journey, I just need to kind of help you, or you give me that stuff and you tell me where to go. I'm not expert at all of it, but I'll definitely point you in the right direction. Or if there are people that are like, you know what, none of this is my jam, but I want that in my community. And hey, I could, help get a grant, or I could help connect people to the right people to make it happen to scale. There are gifts there as well. So I want to just kind of complete the bear medicine part and then lean into how can you co-create with nature. And I know we already have people on the call who were sharing before we started that they are already doing that. So I think it would be great to like open it up and hear from some of you, like how you are doing it or questions that you have about doing it, just to kind of see where it's come in, the years since, it's been 6 years now since 2016 when I got on this path. I did a Google search just yesterday or the day before to see like who else is talking about this. And I was so surprised to find a link from the Wall Street Journal of all places that was talking about how appropriate and even necessary it was to befriend trees during these pandemic times, when you can't safely be with people, or you're not encouraged to be, with people. We have to practice social distancing. Trees don't care. They're totally safe. You can go hug a tree anytime. Or if you're missing a family member, that can't be there with you because of travel restrictions or health restrictions, finding a tree surrogate is pretty awesome. So yeah, Meenakshi, I think I'd like to open it up. Yeah, anybody who would like to come on video, please do so. Or anybody that's sitting with either a question or something you'd like to contribute, we can be playful with that.
Yeah.
And I can definitely keep, adding things if we don't have inquiry around it, but I have a feeling with
I'm
this
sure
group.
people will. Yeah, they will. And I
Yeah,
really want to say, Kathy, what you have presented, I was just smiling and smiling and smiling. It was just making my heart glow, because everything that you've said has shown not only co-creation with nature, but literally with human nature. You know, I feel that it's showing how if you had a time bank that started and became bigger than it could be managed, it just shows how many people have that willingness and wanting to share and to find a way to do that. So it's really showing how that spirit is just going. It's like the roots of the trees just sharing with one another. So I'm
exactly.
loving that. Yeah, I really love that. I hope everyone comes on video. And please do ask your questions or share
Yeah,
your views.
I'll add one more thing while we're queuing up our questions. Maybe either like put your virtual hand up, or if you can see everybody, Meenakshi, if you can see actual hands up, I'll just throw out this one thing. Another tie that Meenakshi and I have, I mentioned it before, is Barbara Marx Hubbard. And I was lucky enough to be studying with Barbara in her very last course that she offered before she transitioned from this earth in 2019, I believe it was, February 2019. All during that course, it was called Conscious Evolutionary Ambassadors. I just kept seeing these, the sacred geometry symbol for, I think it's called the, was it the world flower?
Flower
It's
of life.
flower of life. That's it. Yes. When I would be on these calls with these people that were from like New Zealand and Australia and Germany and all across the United States and just all over the place, and we'd somebody in Africa, I just kept seeing these circles of, kind of our own auras, our own influence, our own, mycelial web that can reach out. And just envisioning, like, what if we did have circles that covered the entire world, in these intersecting circles, like are possible in sociocracy. And in fact, I've started to network with some amazing people who are kind of looking at ways to do that. My sociocracy teacher I'm learning from right now is in Austria. And I've been on calls with people. Shwarna Lakshmi Ravi, she's amazing. She was the first child prime minister in India. She was elected at age 13. I believe she's 22 now. She wrote a white paper about sociocracy and how children in India were implementing this to do self-governance in their schools and self-organize in implementing something they called neighborhoodocracy. So I think if kids could learn this, oh my gosh, you know, how could we transform if kids were learning this? I mean, it's wonderful if we learn it, but how could we develop curriculum where kids get all this stuff and then they just grow up thinking like, this is the way that it is and it's natural to behave like trees and to get what I need, you know, to not be in lack and to be able to use this beautiful technology like the internet and time banking software to just figure out exactly where that piano lesson resides. Like, how can I get that for raking somebody's leaves? How can money not be the thing that keeps me from, you know, getting my dream? So yeah, do we have any questions? Is anybody shy? I'd love to hear from people.
I see. Yeah, okay. Subayama, but can you please unmute your mic?
You know, Kathy, that was a really great presentation. I am a time bank member. You were right. You know, you've done a great job, and other people need to step up. I don't know what to do. You know, I really want to be, you know, maybe activate again. I don't know what stage it is. I have not attended any of the. Do you meet now still? Are we meeting?
That, you know, in permaculture, there's a thing called this, the solution is in the problem. COVID has definitely given us some pretty interesting challenges. I'm not going to call it problems, but challenges where it hasn't always been safe to meet. So I feel like we're just due for a reboot. And this reboot is probably going to be happening largely online, which I think.
Fine. Yeah, let us do that. You know,
So the opportunity that exists with that means that we don't have to be as hyper local as we could otherwise. So I just imagine us doing this reboot of people who resonate with this, learning together, putting in the infrastructure so that we can correctly build, you know, these intersecting circles, and me being very humble now, learning my lesson that I can't just manage thousands of relationships in my head, you know.
I mean, let's talk afterwards.
Subayama, can I ask you as well? You hosted a really lovely event at your house. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that. You were my first person who was willing to do this. It was called Gathering with a Purpose.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, we did. Yeah. That was the first event. Okay, go ahead.
I want to just introduce the idea and then I want you to talk about it. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you can find out more about it at gatheringwithapurpose.net. And this would be something I would include in my Bear Medicine toolkit for, you know, people who want to try to build these communities locally. And you can do it on Zoom. You could adapt this to Zoom, but it suggests doing it around a potluck, which honestly is quite magical. It really was beautiful to do this at Subayama's beautiful house and eat her food and bring dishes. But it's like when you don't yet know that you need a time bank, this exercise allows people to just gather with the purposes that they individually hold, and then to share them with the group and find out what threads of connection might exist there, and if it makes sense to move forward into a time bank. So I want to turn the mic back over to you. How was that for you to host that event?
Like I said, I don't know if you remember, that was the first time I invited other people, remember, into my house after my son passed, you know. So that was really wonderful, you know, to meet everybody. And we think that there are not too many people interested, but there are. They may not always lead, but most of us are followers. So if followers can be inspired to lead maybe one step, you know. So that's what I felt, you know, take one step at a time, even in leading, not all, you know. Does that make sense?
Yes, it takes all different kinds of functions. Thank you. Do you want to say any more? Or do you feel complete?
I'm okay now, but I do want to reboot this again.
Yay. Very cool. Thank you. I would love to see more hands. And if I don't see, I'm going to start calling on people. I'm wondering if I could, oh, Steve, yay. Yes. Yes, I see your hand.
I wanted to, when you were starting out the whole session and asking people what drew them, the bear medicine concept was fascinating to me because I remember many years ago, probably a good 15 or 20 years ago, I had one of those dreams that really didn't feel like a dream at all. It was more like a vision, and I was literally petting a wild bear, and I wasn't afraid of it. I don't know the meaning of that, but it stuck with me, and I don't know if a bear is my spirit animal. I don't know if I'm even politically correct in saying that. Am I appropriating Native American culture? But that was a very powerful. One other thing I want to mention was the concept of sociocracy. I'm familiar with because Dr. Marshall Rosenberg talked about that a lot with his teachings of nonviolent communication. And the two go well together because for people to self-govern, they need to learn how to talk about openly, honestly, and vulnerably about their feelings and needs without making judgments and criticisms about people. But sociocracy is very exciting to me. I think that's the future of a more egalitarian humanity on the planet, because it's really, nobody knows better than the people who is most in need of what and how to mobilize resources to get to where those people who need it the most. What we have now is this concept of abundance, and more is always better. So if you've got $40 billion, $50 billion, you know, eat really fancy food.
I lost you a tiny little bit at the end there. It broke up a tiny bit.
I was to say that now about real abundance, economics, money, and having more and more billions of dollars so they can eat very fancy food and go to restaurants that when they bring you the bill at the end of the meal, it's actually a hardcover book. Seinfeld made a little joke about that once. I can't remember how it goes, but the last thing I wanted to say quickly was the tree hugging. I've hugged a few trees in my time, but I remember one of my teachers who was from India, who came on tour to the United States, and he was somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, or maybe it was in California. And this great master asked him to just stop the car suddenly, and he got out and he walked back to where he had seen this one tree, and he embraced it for I don't know how long. And he later told some of his friends that tree was an old friend from past lifetimes, and it was ready to move on. And shortly after that embrace, the tree was, and he noticed it died. It was ready to move on to its next transmigration. So anyway, I don't want to take too much time. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you for that rich sharing. So I'm really glad Meenakshi shared with us in chat that Steve leads a nonviolent communication circle within her circle. So hopefully we can find out ways to know more about that. And Steve, I just want to respond to what you said, because you touched on so many important things about that nonviolent communication being necessary. You know, I think in sociocracy, a lot of times it presupposes that people have that. And if they don't, that's another one of those toolkit things that really needs to be there, you know? So I want to give a shout out to another group I'm aware of, just recently have found them, called Seventh Generation Labs. And it's in their heart to share indigenous wisdom, because you also touched on is this cultural appropriation. And I don't know if you caught that part where I shared my fear too, is like, should I be saying bear medicine? Is this not right? And, what I learned is that, it's nature, and that's what nature said to me. So it was up to me not to go find it and rip it out of a book that was created by, Native American tradition, but to like learn it myself. And that's why I did the dream work. That's why I did the journaling. And, you said you found it in dream work as well. And for those of you who don't do that stuff, if you're more technically oriented, I also did a Pinterest board. And anything I found, like art that had bears, I was like, ooh, what's this bear showing me? This bear is eating a berry. What's that about? You know, it's slowing down and maybe enjoying the sweetness of life. And also wild edibles, like they're a thing and they're abundant and we don't even treat them as food. Like how disrespectful is that? Like how much richer would we be if we would just notice dandelions are food, you know, berries are food. It's all here. And I see Lori Matthews here, and she's like a sister bear medicine practitioner who I only just met yesterday. So talk about wonderful timing. Lori, would you mind unmiking and telling us a little bit, like, and if I can cue it up, like we came together around what we thought was like Northwest Indiana permaculture, and it just ended up being a geography thing where we're like 2 hours apart. So we might not be able to do this whole circle, but she and I think self-identified as these mother tree hubs. Would you say that was right, Lori?
Oh yes, absolutely. I've sort of come into this realm a little bit later in life. I'm 55 and I really started down this road in my late 30s. So I still feel like a newcomer. And what I believe is unfortunate about that, my family, my parents were older when they had me. Also, yesterday you said you were one of 3 sisters. I'm also one of 3 sisters, but I'm the younger sister. So I'm the squash in the group. But the thing that I'm working toward at this age, as my energy levels are decreasing a small amount, is trying to frame a network for helping a younger generation realize the abundance of what is available in our natural world, and really coming to the understanding that, you know, we're all part of our land and our world. And as most Native Americans assign personhood to trees and animals and even the land, it's, you know, it's not considered something you own or can do with whatever you want. It has to be integrated in a community that you live and work in. And I want that community to include, specific to my wants and desires, an adolescent girl program to bring on more understanding of natural medicine, native plants, wherever you are in the world, and how to use those wonderful tools that we have. So I am working in a circle group of women, and it is a journey, and I can see that it takes a very long time to really acclimate yourself to the spiritual side of what nature is. I've always been very nature oriented. My dad had taken me into the woods from the time I'm a little girl, fishing, hunting, you know, plant-based knowledge, but I got away from it. You know, it was a product of the 80s and thought money needed to be the most important thing in my life. And after I did that for so long and realized I was just terribly unhappy, left my social work job of 27 years, 5 years ago, to take a new journey. And I'm very happy. I have several friends who are farming medicinal herbs for me. I've learned about mushrooms, became certified in all kinds of mushrooms, and I spend my time with plants and in the woods. And even all winter long, I'm in the woods. I forage, I take people out, I teach foraging. I actually use everything that I obtain, and I could just live in this world forever. It is not, you know, it's not a money oriented process, but, you know, money is necessary. And not everyone is willing to share their land, but one I believe people are becoming more enlightened to it. I see people who own woods who want to know what's in their woods. They want to know what those plants are. So I oftentimes will go and show people what they have. And when you start helping people understand both the spiritual and the physical of what we actually have available to us, they do get excited and they want to use it. And, you know, yesterday I had a meeting with a guy who was a Purdue agronomist and has spent his life in golf course management, and he's just learning how to forage for wild edible mushrooms, and he's so excited. He was making puffball mushroom bread and you know, using things, and I, you know, I was able to explain to him. I said, well, this is also a medicine. You can use these puffball mushrooms to stop bleeding, and you know, and people just get really excited. And this is an older person who spent their whole life in their career applying chemicals to golf courses and trying to make the grass grow just right. And now he's like, I don't want to do any of that anymore. I want to know what's out there, you know. And unfortunately, there's just not enough people anymore that can take the younger folks out and instill that love in them. So I try to be that person. I go out, I have dogs and I like to run them, and I'm very fortunate to live in an area where there's 3 public reservoirs and lots of wildlife land. And I spend a lot of time in the backwoods. And in our rivers, I'm particularly interested in water quality and water management and watersheds. So I'm able to take people out.
May I respond real quick? I want to let you know that
I'm sorry.
Meenakshi asked you in chat if you would follow up with her, because I think she would like for you to be a speaker on a follow-up to talk about some of this. So maybe you'll have a chance to even go deeper. And I know we're at the top of the hour, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to go a little late since we started late, but I'd love to kind of tie in some of what you just said, Lori, to bring it back. Because when I met Lori yesterday, I was like, oh, she is a sister, like mother tree avatar. She sees the need to be the hub. Like the other women that were on this call, they were also awesome, but they're like, no, we want to be in the dirt. We want to be working the land. And one of my permaculture trainers was Starhawk. She wrote the book, The Empowerment Manual, also great. She's like fantastic. And fun fact, she lived in Indiana for a little while. I did not know this, but during my training with her, we were waiting in line at the composting toilet. We had time to chat. And she said, growing tomatoes together is the easy part. It's getting people to figure out how they're who's going to do the weeding, who gets the money from when you sell the tomatoes, who gets first crack at the tomatoes. There are all these questions that if we don't address the issues of governance, the issues of how we communicate, and the acknowledgement that yes, we need some money, but there are these other types of currencies, how can we reduce that, pressure on it? And the people who just want to dig right into the dirt, that's great, but they need the people who can be the providers of the tools to make sure that their dreams don't get shattered when they hit that Dunbar number and their network gets too big or they don't have that support. So this is just what I'm seeing, is this need to create these intersecting circles who can share this knowledge. And again, that Google form that I dropped in there, I would really love to hear from each of you, like where you see yourselves fitting in. There were just some roles that I imagined, but if you have other roles that you see, please let me know. I just feel like this is the start of something that feels like it's mine to do, is start that mapping, that resource mapping and the network mapping of who will be the hubs, knowing now that I have to be humble, that I can't do this alone. I can't be the hub that reaches out to the whole world, but I can reach the hub leaders and I can make a network of them. And together we can seriously create that flower of life that reproduces itself over the entire circle, drawing wisdom from how kids are already doing it in India, how kids are already doing it in Africa with neighborhoodocracy. It's just absolutely incredible. So thanks for being so patient with me to listen to why is time banking and permaculture and tree hugging and sociocracy and all these things that don't really seem that related at first glance. It's absolutely critical in my mind. And I just so appreciate you being here with me to spread this.
I just want to share something, Kathy. Look at the gift I got from my daughter's boyfriend
Oh, I have that
for
book. I love
Christmas.
that book. That's such a great book. That's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're at the end of our time.
Yes,
I'm in no
yeah.
hurry, but I want to be respectful of the container that we
Yes.
promised people. So I'll turn it back to you, Meenakshi.
Well, I would actually like to know, in case anyone did want to share, and if Kathy doesn't mind. I know, first of all, I'm so grateful to you, Kathy, because I know you're very busy. You have many things to do. And you have, I feel you have like opened up a door, which I'm going to keep wanting to keep asking you to share, because I really would love you to share more about time banking if you can one day. Literally, like how you set it up and how you were connecting it with the trees. I loved that, you know. I think we could delve deeper into that. But I'm also wondering if anyone here wanted to say something and didn't feel that they didn't get a chance. If you don't mind staying a little longer, Kathy. Is everyone feeling complete, or does anyone want to say anything? No? Okay. So then we'll stop here. Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you everyone for being here. Kathy, last
Thank
word
you.
from you.
I would just be very open to connecting with anyone, on this call. I think you're all my people. So beyond the Google form, you can find me, at Kathy Sipple across most social media, or you can email me. Gmail is probably my simplest, or Kathy@kathysipple.com, kasipple@gmail.com. Any of those. I'd love to hear from you, free form or the Google form, whatever, but I'd love to stay in touch. Anytime I find people with this much intersectionality, I just feel like we're the hub of what could be spread out and literally create those circles. So thank you for your willingness.
Meenakshi, after the recording is stopped, would we be able to ask just a couple of quick questions, a couple of quick comments?
You wanted the recording stopped, so I will pause it.
Up a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to summarize what we just said a little bit off camera and off tape. There's a little concern that, hey, I am a white woman, mostly of European origin, and I'm talking about bear medicine. I acknowledged earlier, is this scary? Is this appropriate? Should I not be talking about this? And then I came to say it was okay because it was my interpretation, and Meenakshi so beautifully said that she thinks that cultural appropriation is a modern term, a modern phrase, but people who are really in tune with this oneness, this global community, it's not something that we have to worry about so much. And then there was an interesting thought about transmigration and reincarnation. Is it possible that we've had experience? So that informed all of what brought us to this last question. So I was just asked about something that I didn't know, but when it was being asked, I was getting truth shivers. The question was, somebody on this call had been in sweat lodges where they talked about bear medicine. They talked about a bear trail, which honestly, I've never been in a sweat lodge. I didn't know about the bear trail. I didn't, and yet I did, because when she was describing it, I thought of my dream. In the dream, and it was the importance of not crossing the bear trail. So this is my interpretation, and do with this what you will. I would be so interested to hear if somebody else has a piece of this puzzle or knows more. But in my dream, I was standing at the bottom of a hill, and I noticed these interesting marks on an old, I think it was an oak tree, I'm not 100% sure. It was just curious, it almost looked like art, and I was drawn to it. I was touching it. They were deep and they were big, and then I was like, you know what? That is a bear claw. Oh, and I had this realization that I am human, and that probably means there are bears nearby. Do I really know what to do if there is a bear? And so seeing the claw, I looked up, or the claw mark, and I looked up to the left, I looked up to the right, and there were two bears. There were bears at the top of each of these hills. And I knew that my way to safety was to go straight up the hill, and there was kind of a shelter in the middle. I didn't get all of this in the moment, but what I kind of understood that might be was like the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. And, you know, in Buddhism or whatever, it's like the middle path. And I knew that I was safe if I stuck to my path, the middle path. And I just knew that I was safe, you know. So, you know, the pituitary gland is kind of in the middle of your brain, and it's where we do our meditation and finding the third eye and everything like that. So I just followed that middle path. And that's where I approached the shelter that weirdly was made of mushrooms. And I found out later that they were, you know, bear tooth mushrooms. But I don't know if any of that speaks to you. It's also interesting that bear tooth mushrooms, and they're related to lion's mane mushrooms, they look very similar. Those have been shown to help dementia, to help memory care. You know, Lori did a beautiful job of talking about all the medicinal qualities of mushrooms. I don't know as much as she does, but I know that I have relatives living in past who have brain issues, and they're taking lion's mane supplements, you know? So I'm just wondering if any of that speaks to why you wouldn't cross the bear path. It's like not being on the left, not being on the right, finding the middle way, finding your way, and staying in that, you know, center brain in the pituitary gland that resides in all of us. Like it's our internal sweat lodge. All right, download over. I don't have a tree to hug to verify that, but that's just my own interpretation. Anybody else? I'll go back to you, Meenakshi.
When you were talking, I felt that crossing the bear path is almost like saying, "I won't accept it. I'll cut it." And maybe what we are being shown is to walk with the bear, walk the bear path. So maybe that's what the middle path is. Physically, of course, they always say don't cross it because don't be near it. I don't know what else it could be. But does anyone else have anything they'd like to ask or share? Steve.
Would you mind pausing the recording just for another moment?
Thank you so much, Kathy. I just feel that we have been, you know, I feel you've been the mother tree here, and you have gathered us all in. And I don't know whether I have never used time banking, but everything that you have spoken has shown me that the way we think of a bear hug in a very loving way, the way we think of Pachamama's hug, I feel very embraced by this session. And I also feel very enlightened. We've got so much information. Thank you very much, and everyone who asked wonderful questions so
Thank
that
you.
we could learn more.
That's about the highest compliment I could get, is that you felt my energy as a mother tree. Because my husband is Pat's on my screen. She's right behind me, or right below me, Pat Peterson. My husband, John, and I do not have children. And when we got married, we kind of thought maybe that was in the cards. And it just, through a series of circumstances, it was not to be. And when we made that decision together, I said, well, we are not going to be dinks, double income, no kids. I was like, I am going to have nature be my child, and I am going to have projects in the environment. So just remember, you got to be cool with that. And to his credit, he has been cool with that. And I said, I would like to be a universal mother, you know, so that's the mother tree is my model of how to do that in the world. And so I think anybody can be drawn to this, whether you're an empty nester, whether you're female or male. I don't think it matters whether you have kids and you're already good at being a mother, but especially for people who haven't had kids and you just feel that ache. This has been something that has been deeply satisfying. I'm going to get like choked up a little bit, but it's my legacy. It's what I want to leave. And I'm not going to stop until we've got the world or the flower of life established, you know, with all these tools that we've talked about and the mother trees in place to create. I believe it's within our ability to recreate Eden, you know, whether you want to call it that, or just the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. The Charles Eisenstein book is just lovely. The more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. I think we can recreate that in our time while we're here on Earth in this generation, if we use our free will to connect and cooperate and rebuild intentionally.
Yes, co-create a world that benefits all beings.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been my pleasure.
Bye-bye, everyone.